All eyes are on the quarterbacks, but which members of the New England Patriots defense are poised to make the most out of mandatory minicamp? Stick around. You're about to be locked in to the Locked On Patriots podcast.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all of you Foxborough faithful, and thank you once again for making Locked On Patriots a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage and also your first listen each and every day. Remember, Locked On Patriots is not only a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, but we are also free and available on all platforms, so make sure to smash that subscribe button, especially on YouTube, and download and follow wherever you get your podcasts to ensure that you're getting the latest episode as soon as it's available. I'm your host, Mike Debate, and I cover your New England Patriots for the Patriots country. So reach out to me and let me know what's on your mind on X at MDABATENFL. While you're out there showing some love to Locked On Patriots social media style, please be sure to follow our account there as well at LO_Patriots. And Pats fans, we are hours away from the start of mandatory minicamp, June 10th through the 12th at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. And here today to break down the storylines that we expect to see out of mandatory minicamp is my good friend, my resident voice of reason here on Locked On Patriots, my Patriots paisan, of course. He is the columnist extraordinaire for PatsFans.com, as well as being the co-host of another amazing podcast, one of the best listens in Patriots Nation, Patriots 4th and 2, alongside the great Derek Havens, my buddy Steve Balestrieri. Steve, welcome back to Locked On Patriots. It feels right to end the week in style with you, paisan.
It's always great to talk football with you.
Steve, it's always my honor and always my privilege to invite you here to Locked On Patriots, especially when we close the week in style here on Locked On. And, of course, mandatory minicamp coming up. A lot of big storylines that the Patriots are going to be looking at. Obviously, the biggest is first mandatory minicamp without Bill Belichick in nearly a quarter century. Gerard Mayo now with the reins of this team. He's already off and running. The Patriots are a couple of weeks deep now into OTAs, and they're having fun out there on the field. They're showing some promise, and a lot of the young guys that we expect to see take that step forward are already doing so. And we all know about the quarterbacks. Every single time the Patriots take the field between now and the start of the regular season, all eyes are going to be on the quarterbacks. Who's emerging? Is Drake May doing enough to earn the starting job from Jacoby Brissett? Are we looking at carrying three quarterbacks with Joe Milton being the third and Bailey Zappi being the odd man out at this point? A lot of those questions are going to be answered, and we've talked about the quarterbacks a lot here on Locked On Patriots, but you always take a reasonable approach to everything, my friend, and we want to take some of that reason, that wisdom and counsel, and put it into practice today in talking about three under-the-radar storylines going into mandatory minicamp. And maybe they're not under the radar on everybody's screen, folks. I know a lot of our fans out there, especially Locked On Patriots listeners, they're astute, they're intuitive, they're well-versed in terms of what they're looking for on the field this week when the Patriots take the field in Foxborough. Steve, you know a thing or two about protection. I thought we'd start with the defense this week. And, of course, a lot of people wondering who from the defense is going to stand out, who's going to step it up, and who's going to make this pass rush more fearsome this year than they were last year. And I think the Patriots did a good job of trying to keep that pass rush together, especially after losing guys like Matthew Judon. Judon has said he's going to be in Foxborough for mandatory minicamp. His exact quote to Mass Live's Karen Garigian, "I ain't giving away no money." That's a good thing for the New England Patriots. You want to hear that. You don't want to see someone as prominent as Judon holding out, but we're also anxious to see what he looks like on the field. He is coming back from a torn biceps. By all accounts, he should not be hampered by that injury, but you want to see him assimilate himself back in. And I think you also want to see what kind of attitude he's taking the field with. When you look at Matthew Judon right now, is that someone you're going to be watching closely? And who else from this defense do you want to be watching? Who else are you going to be keeping your sharp eye on when the Patriots take the field?
Well, first of all, they're talking about the edge rushers. Having Judon back is huge. He's a veteran leader. The other players look up to him. And pairing him with Josh Uche is obviously a big plus for the defense. But the other two guys I'm really looking at for the linebacking crew and edge players are Keon White and Marte Mapu, because I think these guys are going to really step up and play a big role this year.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit about White earlier this week and last week, Steve, in terms of someone that's not only showing prowess on the field, but he's also taken on a more prominent leadership role in that locker room and on the field. And that's big news for someone like Keon White, who's not known as being a vocal leader. He's a guy that will lead by example. His play on the field and his work ethic have never been questioned from the time that he was at Georgia Tech right up until now in a New England Patriots uniform. This is someone that's going to outwork anyone. You're not going to outwork Keon White. People may work just as hard, but he's going to make sure that no one works harder than him. And that's infectious. That's something that young players feed off of. And if you see someone, especially a younger guy like Keon White, already buying into that mentality, that's going to lead to big things to do. Keon is a very good run defender. That's primarily how the Patriots deployed him in his rookie season last year in 2023. But if Judon is taking some of the pass rush looks, it's also going to allow Keon the opportunity and the lanes, the open lanes, to get after the quarterback. So I love that suggestion. I think Marte Mapo is going to be someone that does play a little bit more linebacker than safety this year. I know Patriots coaches have said that they consider him a safety. They're going to give him looks back there. But I think when you have guys like Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers playing at such a high level, it's going to free up Marte to be able to play that hybrid linebacker up close to the line of scrimmage. I think that's where you're going to see him deployed this year, and I think that's a very good thing for him. And again, we've talked about this. This is also big for guys like Josh Uche, who had a little bit of a regression last year. 15 tackles, 3 sacks in 15 games last year. Set a career high with 11.5 sacks when Judon and he were playing at a top level in 2022. So that's a guy that's going to benefit right off the bat. And I've mentioned this several times, is someone like Christian Barmore benefits so much from having Matthew Judon on the field. And Judon positions himself close to Barmore. That's going to allow him to draw the attention of the opposing blockers. So you're looking at either Barmore getting more time and getting the opportunity to showcase his talents of getting after the quarterback. But most importantly, Barmore is actually going to take the double team. I think he's better at it. He's more suited for it. It's more his game. When he's taken on the double team, that allows Judon to get one-on-one matchups on the edge. And in my opinion, there's nobody better in the league taking on those one-on-one matchups. He's going to get after the quarterback. He's going to brush the passer. He's going to make things difficult on the passing game as a whole. Yeah, having Judon back out there it touches so many aspects of this front seven that I think it may be one of the biggest storylines heading into mandatory minicamp, because if this guy comes in locked in, engaged, and showing that he can be athletic at the highest level, I really can't wait to see what he can do in training camp, especially when you're looking at joint practices, preseason games, into the regular season. This is where the buds start to really show a little bit through the soil. And that's what I'm looking forward to most when it comes to Matthew Judon.
Yeah, and I think that's huge for the defense, but we're also looking at cornerback play coming up. They're getting Marcus Jones back, who missed all of last year. I'm curious to see how he fits in this year. But the other two guys I'm really looking forward to seeing are Alex Austin and Isaiah Bolden. Because I think cornerback depth is still a little bit of a question. Christian Gonzalez is obviously back. That's going to be their number one guy. Do they bring in a veteran like we talked about in the past, Stephon Gilmore? Or do they go, with the young guys that they have and see where they're at this point, this year?
I'm glad that you mentioned Alex Austin, because he spoke with the media earlier this week and really has been one of the standout performers during OTAs. And he credited guys like Isaiah Bolden and Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones and guys that have been around this team for a little bit as being very stabilizing forces to him. Bolden is someone we didn't really get a chance to see a whole lot of last year because of the injury that thankfully was a lot less tragic than we originally believed it could be, suffering the injury that he did against the Green Bay Packers preseason last year. When he left the field, we were wondering whether or not a promising young career could have been over in the blink of an eye. thankfully, Isaiah Bolden was able to come out of that. He's back on the field, and I really would love to see what he can do, because the things that he was showing us in preseason before that injury really made us believe that the Patriots had a potential late-round steal in last year's draft. I think Isaiah can be huge for this team this year, and I, for one, cannot wait to see what he brings to the table. But Alex is another guy that can make that extra leap maybe this year. We saw what he could do last year in the interception against the Buffalo Bills late season. This kid can draw a beat on the ball, and I think he can be a very good complementary piece in that secondary. I think it's excellent that you mentioned the secondary, because it all goes hand in hand for the Patriots. When pass rushers step up and they get a chance to showcase what they can do, it allows the secondary to play their game well in that defensive backfield. Steve, before we take our leave of the subject, safeties right now, who emerges from that group now as the third safety? You've seen Joshua Bledsoe hang around for a number of years now and, try to make strides. Is he the guy that finally becomes that third guy in that room, or is there someone that could take that spot that we haven't mentioned just yet?
Well, I've been a Bledsoe fan since they brought him on board, so I'm going to stick with him. I think, he's just been a victim of numbers at, this point of his career. I think the Patriots know he can play. It's just, they've had such a logjam of talent at the safety position. It's been hard for him to get on the field. Step forward and take a big leap in showing what he can do.
Yeah, I think Bledsoe is someone that definitely has the ability not only to hit, but also to cover. And we've been seeing seedlings of that for the last couple of seasons, and his emergence into a potential everyday player for the Patriots, or at least a notable part of their depth at that position, especially at safety, because you're looking at versatility, a guy that can play the strong, he can play the free, someone that knows the system well. And by all accounts, DeMarcus Covington, Gerard Mayo, Brian Belichick, Mike Pellegrino have all given indications that this is a system that is not going to change that much from 2023 to 2024. It's not like what Alex Van Pelt is running into on the offensive side of the ball, and we're going to get into that in just a moment, folks. But a guy that I'm watching very closely, and I'm going to continue to watch closely into next week's practices, which thankfully are open to the media, and we're going to get a chance to really see what the Patriots can do, is undrafted rookie free agent Del Pettis, the safety out of Troy. This kid intrigued me from the moment they brought him in and signed him. 63 games, including 61 consecutive starts, by the way, folks. So once this guy got into the starting lineup, he did not relinquish his position. 315 tackles, 7.5 for a loss, 14 pass breakups, 2 fumbles recovered, 1 interception, and 1 sack. Adequately sized, 6 foot, 205 pounds, not going to stand out for his size, but it's not going to hold him back either. He's capable of playing all over the field. This is a kid that at Troy aligned at free safety, box safety. He even played some time as a slot defender, core special teamer, over 4,000 combined special team snaps during his collegiate career. This kid can play, and he can play all over the field. I, for one, am really going to be intrigued by watching whether or not he gets notable reps in mandatory minicamp, and if he does it continue into training camp? Because if it does, you might be looking at a kid that could crack the 53-man roster. I'm really intrigued by this kid's skill set.
Yeah, he's obviously he's coming from lesser competition, playing at Troy. However, like you said, he's got a ton of experience, and he's versatile, which the Patriots love their defensive players to be versatile, that can do multiple things. That's not going to change from Belichick to Gerard Mayo and DeMarcus Covington, because it's just the more you can do, the more valuable you are. And I'm curious to see this kid too, because by all accounts, he could be a real diamond in the rough here.
And the New England Patriots love to pluck these players out of obscurity. I know that was a hallmark of Bill Belichick, that he did that for a number of years, but Gerard Mayo learned from Bill. And you love getting versatile guys in here that not only can play the game well, but also learn the system and play the system well. And that's something that I think Pettis is capable of doing on both accounts. So, folks, it's going to be interesting to see who steps up on defense. I know everybody's talking offense when it comes to the New England Patriots and mandatory minicamp, but Steve, I think we've dropped some pearls of wisdom for Patriots fans to take a look at and see who may emerge as a potential minicamp darling heading into the big training camp when it begins in July. But Steve, that's not to say that offense is going to be ignored. It certainly won't be by the Pats coaches. It definitely won't be by all of you fans out there. It's not going to be ignored here on Locked On Patriots either, because Steve and I are going to talk about a couple of new faces in the wide receivers room that might give some of the old guard a run for their money when it comes to a roster spot. Yeah, the Patriots are pretty deep at wide receiver in terms of bodies. Who's going to emerge on this roster in terms of talent? Steve and I are going to talk about that point and more when this episode of the Locked On Patriots podcast continues, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On listeners, passion, drive, and patience is what brings home that winning trophy. You know what? It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. Our good friends over at eBay Motors have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Patriots fans, thank you once again for joining us here today on Locked On Patriots. And joining us to close the week in style is our good friend and resident voice of reason, Steve Balestrieri. Steve, thank you for joining me here today. And before Steve and I continue our discussion on the Patriots roster and its impact on mandatory minicamp, I just have one question for all of you everydayers out there. Are you tired of having to turn down the volume with all that shouting going on when all you're looking for is to get your daily sports fix? I know I am. We all are. But good news, folks, because it's time to finally make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming going on. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news each and every day, streaming 24/7 on the YouTube channel or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Don't delay, do it today. Check out Locked On Sports Today, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As is Locked On Patriots. And Steve, there is no question that as the Patriots head into mandatory minicamp, a lot of eyes are going to be on the Patriots receivers core. Obviously, Jalen Polk right now, Javon Baker, Patriots new receivers are going to be getting an awful lot of looks. Even veterans like KJ Osborne, how do they assimilate into the Patriots roster right now? And are they going to make strong pushes for a roster spot? But Patriots made a couple of interesting signings this week at the position. Earlier in the week, bringing in Division III undrafted rookie free agent David Wallis, and also just on Thursday, the Patriots signing former Division II standout and former Rutgers wide receiver. Yeah, that's right, folks. You can take the Bill Belichick out of New England, but you can't take the Rutgers out of New England. That's still very much there, and that is JaQuae Jackson. Steve, when you look at these two signings, which one, first of all, stood out to you more as the more intriguing? And do either of these players have a chance to challenge some of the old guard on this roster right now at receiver in terms of earning a roster spot?
Well, it's interesting. When they signed Wallis, I was thinking, they might see something in this guy. Then I saw the Rutgers guy, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go, right? But honestly, it's going to be tough for either of these guys because they're coming in at such a late juncture. To learn the offense just prior to minicamp. Obviously, if they can show just a little bit of something, they'll be there for training camp. But I'm actually really surprised that they have so many wide receivers in, because honestly, I think 5 guys are pretty much locked into the roster. And then you have all the rest really jockeying for one position. But, for the 2 new guys, I'm kind of betting on the kid from Rutgers. I don't know why. Call me crazy, but another Rutgers guy on the Patriots, I could see that happening.
To be honest with you, Steve, I don't really think you're crazy at all. I think JaQuae Jackson actually has a good chance to turn some heads, starting with mandatory minicamp and into training camp. And of course, as the great Don would say, I'm going to give you my reasons in just a minute. But I actually like this signing, and I think this has the potential to be one that could allow the Patriots to cultivate this kid in terms of talent. On the condition of anonymity yesterday, I spoke to a couple of colleagues of mine that cover the Falcons on a daily basis, and they were very impressed by what they saw with this kid during rookie minicamp. A lot of what they told me matches a lot of what was coming out in his scouting reports, were that this kid can make contested catches in all types of coverage. He's very good against man coverage. He's very good against zone. Someone who doesn't really change his game a whole lot to suit what the defensive backs are going to do. He just goes up there, goes up and gets the football. And that makes it very difficult for opposing defenses to cover guys like this when it's man-to-man coverage, especially when someone is that aggressive and has the speed that JaQuae Jackson has. Posted a 4.4 40-yard time and a 6.85 three-cone drill during his pro day. So this kid can move around. He's not only great vertically when it comes to speed, but he also can change direction and maintain that speed. And that's something that the Patriots don't have a whole lot of on this roster. I also like the attitude that this kid's bringing to the table as well. He sat down and had a chance to speak with Justin Mello of the Draft Network just prior to the draft. And they asked him about why he wanted to move on from Division II, California, Pennsylvania, and why he wanted to make the move to Rutgers. And he said he wanted to show that he can play at a high level against Division I talent. He did that last year. Obviously, he put up very gaudy numbers, 1,000-yard receiver at California, Pennsylvania. Didn't exactly put up those numbers with Rutgers, but he did get 361 yards on 22 catches and a touchdown on the season last year. So he does have the pedigree to be able to play at a high level. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots match him up, which defensive backs he challenges, and whether or not he can parlay his size and speed into a spot on this roster. I don't think you're crazy. I think the Patriots see something in this kid, and I think you're going to see it starting with mandatory minicamp coming up this week.
Yeah, and again, I mean, perhaps in this kid, they see a guy that's going to fit the type of offense that they want to run, right? We know they want to predicate the offense on the running game and then have, bootleg passes and take shots down the field with play action. And, they're probably thinking about, hey, there'll be a lot of contested catches out there on the field. And if this guy can show that he's able to do that against top competition, I don't put it against him, getting a shot at the 53 or at a minimum, on the practice squad.
Absolutely. And you mentioned versatility and athleticism, and something that may have stood out from JaQuae Jackson. Give the Patriots an opportunity to maybe give this kid an extra look, a look that he wasn't going to get in Atlanta. I received a good question yesterday on Twitter, and people asked, well, if he was that good in Atlanta, why did Atlanta give up on him? Why didn't he get drafted? Well, I don't know why teams didn't take a flyer on this kid for a draft position, but I can tell you Atlanta right now believes they can contend in that division. And there were too many receivers for too few spots on the 53-man roster, and they weren't quite sure that JaQuae was going to be able to get through and kind of fall to them if they were to leave him exposed during final roster cutdowns and trying to put him on the practice squad. They believe that cutting this kid loose now allowed him to be able to catch on to a more wide receiver needy team that could roster him. Who knows? The Patriots might be able to do it. So keep a sharp eye on this kid. But I wouldn't sleep on Wallis either. Wallis could be a practice squad guy, but I think he could turn some heads during mandatory minicamp and in training camp. This is another kid that tested very well in the pre-draft process at his pro day workouts. A 4.9 40-yard dash, 6.9 three-cone drill. Here's what I love about this kid, though. At 6 feet, 184 pounds, 35-inch vertical leap, a 10-foot, 1-inch broad jump. So this kid can move around the field. He's athletic as well. If he turns some heads, don't be a bit surprised to see the Patriots trying to maybe stash this kid on the practice squad. But I think you're going to see him get some looks in mandatory minicamp. And obviously, I mean, each one of these guys is going to have a difficult time cracking the roster. Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, Tyquan Thornton, KJ Osborne. These guys are most likely penciled in. Maybe Tyquan facing a little bit more of an uphill battle making the roster because you've got Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. But these are guys that could challenge someone like a Juju Smith-Schuster for a receiver spot on this roster. And if Juju doesn't come out and have a phenomenal camp, he could be the guy on the outside looking in. A lot to think about right now when it comes to the Patriots and this roster, especially at the receiver position, Steve. But I think both of these guys have a shot.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that they did bring them in at this point with so many wide receivers already on the roster tells me two things, really. It tells me they think these guys have a shot and that they're willing to give them a chance. And it also tells me that maybe they're not enthralled with some of those guys who are on the bottom end of the wide receiver, depth chart.
A lot of moving parts for the Patriots in terms of wide receivers. Folks, who are you looking forward to seeing in mandatory minicamp? Drop us a note in the comments section below. I'll be there, boots on the ground this week. I would love to keep my eye on some players for you. Report back to you here on Locked On Patriots exactly what these guys are doing and how they're going to be able to make their mark and make an impression and maybe, who knows, even earn a roster spot. Steve, we talked offense, we've talked defense. We are not quite done yet, though, because as you know, it's not just about the players that we've mentioned so far that are roster long shots. There are a lot of long shots to make the roster this season. When we come back, Steve Balestrieri is going to lend his wisdom, his counsel, and most importantly, his reason when it comes to long shots being able to make the squad. Who begins to make their case this week at mandatory minicamp? We'll discuss that point when this episode of the Locked On Patriots podcast wraps up right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. And Locked On listeners, sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something, and you might even be thinking about the same thing this week. Folks, your favorite team in Foxborough has a new quarterback, and it's a new era here in New England. We're all excited to see how the new players and the new coaches work with each other. But there is also a level of anxiety about how long it's going to take for this team to return to respectability. Could things get worse before they get better? Well, life can present similar situations, and therapy can help you because therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Patriots fans, thank you once again for joining us here today on Locked On Patriots. And of course, closing the week in style with my good friend Steve Balestrieri of PatsFans.com. Folks, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, it is our mission to bring you the very best coverage possible when it comes to Patriots, Celtics, Red Sox, Bruins. It's all right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And we at the Locked On Podcast Network are very excited to be launching our very new platform, Locked On Sports Boston, which is going to serve as a hub when it comes to the Boston Red Sox, the Boston Bruins, your New England Patriots, And of course, competing for Banner 18 right now, your Boston Celtics. So keep an eye out on your Boston sports feeds. Locked On Sports Boston will be adding number of shows into those feeds on a daily basis when it comes to either YouTube or your podcast feeds. So stay tuned, check it out. You are not going to want to miss the great coverage we have coming to you on the brand new hub for Boston sports here on the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On Sports Boston. But Steve, as always, Locked On Patriots will continue to bring you the very best coverage we possibly can here. And with mandatory minicamp opening up shortly, just hours away now on Monday, June 10th, there are always players that are looking to make their mark. There are always players that are doing their best to make the 53-man roster, make an impact on the coaching staff in hopes of maybe earning a roster spot when all is said and done. We've talked a little bit about players that could end up doing so on defense and on offense. Steve, you see things us mere mortals don't see. We've sat on that grassy knoll up at Gillette Stadium watching players emerge, watching players do their best to earn the attention, the watchful eye of the coaches that are trying to determine whether or not this player is worthy of a roster spot. In your expert, professional opinion, my friend, when you look at this roster from top to bottom, who do you believe has the chance to make that case, and who do you think will start to make that case this week when the Patriots take the field for mandatory minicamp?
Well, I'll tell you one guy that I had written off completely by the draft. In free agency, the Patriots signed KJ Osborne. Then they drafted 2 wide receivers, Polk and Baker. And I completely wrote off Tyquan Thornton, right? And I know we're getting the mini camp and OTA Tyquan Thornton sightings again, right? He's been making some plays. He has bulked up a little bit. And I'm curious now because they've had him playing as a gunner. And, we talked about at the outset of the show, right? The more you can do with the Patriots, and that's been the knock on Thornton. He doesn't play special teams. So now I'm seeing, reports of him, right? We're working as a gunner alongside Brendan Schooler. He's showing up again in spring, workouts. I think if he can have a really good mini camp and he can stay healthy through training camp in the preseason, because he hasn't been able to do that yet, right? Mm-hmm. He can stay healthy. I think he's probably going to make the roster.
Tyquan is obviously one of the more polarizing figures on this roster, Steve. There's no question about it. People absolutely love what he can bring to the table, but they don't believe that he's going to be able to put it all together in order to set that table for any reason, whether it be his build, whether it be his skill set, whether it be him being injury prone. A lot of people look at Tyquan Thornton and say all the potential in the world, all the promise, but just can't make it work. And I think until Patriots fans see it on the field, they're not going to believe it. But I think you're onto something when it comes to Tyquan. And for the reason that you mentioned, that he is being utilized potentially as a gunner. You're seeing him right now work with guys like Brendan Schooler in terms of being able to be a contributor on special teams and maybe someone that the Patriots can rely upon to not only be a deep threat, someone that obviously has the speed to do it. I don't think anyone's ever questioned Tyquan Thornton's speed. This kid is a blazer. I've seen him in Gillette. I've seen him move down the field. He clearly is one of the fastest players I've ever covered. But when it comes to his ability to get open, when it comes to his ability to fight off coverage, or it comes to his ability to be able to be on the radar of the Patriots quarterbacks, that's still yet to be seen. So with a lot of competition coming his way this year and a stacked wide receiver room, Tyquan is going to have to be a cut above the rest of the competition. How does he do that? Does he do it by proving he can play special teams? Does he do that with his speed? There's a lot of factors involved there, but I think Tyquan Thornton is someone that can emerge as a potential dark horse candidate to make the roster this season. And I agree with you. He's a guy that I'm keeping my eye on as well. On the defensive side of the ball, Steve, is there anybody that has stood out to you as a member of a depth chart that could make waves and make things difficult on the Patriots defensive coaching staff when they're trying to trim that position group down and make the roster this year?
Boy, that's a tough one because, the defense is pretty much set. I mean, you could play with cornerback depth a little bit, but you look at the rest of the roster and they're pretty stacked. It's going to be tough. Probably why they only drafted one defensive player this year. Dial, who from South Carolina, who I like, by the way. I think he's going to be another guy that will have to showcase his ability on special teams this year to stick. And, with his length and speed, maybe they work him as a gunner as well.
Folks, who are you watching in mandatory minicamp? Once again, who do you want us to keep our eye on, not just in the wide receivers core, like we told you last segment, throughout the entire roster? Drop us a note in the line below because we would love to hear who you want to see showcased by the Patriots these next 3 days. And of course, don't forget, it is mandatory minicamp day, but it is also Mailbag Monday. So make sure to get those questions in over the weekend because Murph and I are going to be talking about all of your favorite players and answering all of your questions when it comes to minicamp, training camp, or anything on your mind when it comes to your New England Patriots. But in the meantime, I want to give a very special tip of the cap and a lot of admiration to my good friend Steve Balestrieri for joining me here today. Playing a little wounded, but he still did a great job of bringing you all the wisdom and counsel and reason that we can handle here on the pod. But it's always my honor to close the week in style with you. Before I let you go, please let everyone know where they can reach out to you and what you got cooking in Steve's kitchen between now and the next time you grace our presence here on Locked On Patriots.
Wouldn't you know, like right at the end of the podcast, now the hiccups finally go away, right?
That's always the way, isn't it, bud?
Yeah, isn't it? But thanks for having me, Mike. You do such a super job over here. I always look forward to your podcast. You can find me on Twitter or X at SteveB7SFG. I write for PatsFans.com. As you mentioned, I do the podcast with Derek Havens, and we've been doing it. Coming this July will be 13 years. So, we have a lot of fun with that. And this week, I'm actually my Sunday column, which I'm working on right now. I'm covering a lot of the same topics we just did. What to look for in minicamp, what we want to see out of minicamp, and who do we think is going to emerge. So if you would like a recap on what we talked about, and check us out on Pats Fan.
Absolutely. Steve's Sunday column, folks, is one of the best reads anywhere in Patriots Nation. I look forward to it each and every weekend. A good buddy Murph refers to it as the Sunday paper for a reason. You anticipate it. You wait to see it. And it's always, always great. It never disappoints. So please, by all means, check that out. And don't miss an opportunity to check out any of the great written work that Steve does for PatsFans.com. And never miss an episode of Patriots 4th and 2 alongside Steve and Derek Havens. They've been putting out some great content lately. I'm a fan. I watch it each and every time an episode drops. Folks, you will always love it as well. And make sure to pair it with Locked On Patriots as part of your daily Patriots coverage. What can I say to all of you everydayers out there? You make Locked On Patriots possible, and I cannot thank you enough for all of the support that you provide to the pod. Once again, keep a sharp eye out for Locked On Sports Boston content to start penetrating your feed here on Locked On Patriots on YouTube and also wherever you get your audio podcasts. Folks, we're doing some great things here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am so privileged and so honored to be a part of that, and it's just the start, and it's going to enhance your coverage here on Locked On Patriots and all throughout Boston sports, so make sure to keep your sharp eye on that. Bud, what can I say? Steve, thank you so much for joining me today. On behalf of my good friend, Steve Balestrieri, I'm Mike Debate, reminding you all to stay safe and to stay well and to continue to be the change that you wish to see in the world. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here again on Monday on Locked On Patriots.